Good. I like my, like a 16th of an
You
inch.
need to start letting Andy.
Yeah, they're in.
Yep, I started the broadcast.
Thank you, Ms. Ripa.
You're welcome, Counselor.
1, 2.
Okay. Testing, can I be heard? Hello?
I can hear you.
All right. Welcome to our special town council meeting of May 20th, 2020. President Aguiar is unable to attend tonight, so I'll be chairing. I appreciate everyone's patience and understanding. I've been told to remind everyone who speaks tonight to always announce their name prior to speaking. People on the phone cannot see you, and they would like to know who is speaking. I've also been told that if you are on the Zoom app and you wish to speak, and you should raise your hand icon and you will be recognized. Also, for those of you who dialed in on phone, to raise your hand to ask a question or to speak, dial *9, and the host will be notified of your interest to speak. Let's see. There is no administrator's report tonight. Pledge of Allegiance. I'm sorry, I am skipping the Pledge of Allegiance, and a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under
Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Right, and I believe the first item is roll call. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Kuzo,
Present.
Ms. Abbott,
Present.
Mr. Hamilton,
Present.
Mr. Katzman,
Present.
Mr. Kelly,
Present.
Dr. Ryan.
Present.
Mr. Aguilar is absent.
Okay, there is no administrator's report tonight or president's report. However, before we go on, I'd like to acknowledge and thank the town staff and volunteers for the enormous amount of time and energy that they have devoted to making sure that Portsmouth is safe and healthy and high functioning during this COVID-19 pandemic. Everything from making sure our most vulnerable citizens have access to food and are getting PPE for our first responders, to making sure our financial record keeping will help us get the most federal dollar reimbursements, countless new tasks on top of everyday duties, done with amazing dedication, creativity, flexibility, and common sense. Portsmouth is lucky to have you. Okay, so on to the first item. Do I have a, correct, do I need a motion, Madam Clerk?
No.
I do not. All right, so we shall begin as sitting as the Board of Licensed Commissioners. Let's see, the first item is a request approval for a temporary seasonal expansion of service area. The first applicant is the Montauk Country Club, 500 Anthony Road, to allow food and alcohol service in an outside dining area from May 21 to October 15, 2020.
Keith Hamilton, motion to approve.
Glenn Katzman, second.
Could I ask one question? This is Mark Ryan. Are there any abutters near the place where the food is to be served?
No. Just the 18th green.
Yeah, I don't think so, but I just wanted to make sure. So my knowledge of the map of Portsmouth is not completely ingrained, so.
At Montauk, there's one caretaker who lives upstairs. That'd be the only
Okay.
abutter.
I'm sure he'll be invited, so that's fine. Okay,
I would hope so.
exactly.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion of the town council members?
Excuse me, I should see if there are any people with hands raised, because this is a hearing.
There are not.
Nope.
All right, I've been informed there are no hands raised on this item, and are there no comments from town council members? So we're ready.
Nope.
Okay, and so we're ready for a vote. All those in favor, Madam Clerk?
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Mr. Jukusa?
Aye. So the motion passes 6-0. It is approved. We move on to item B. That is a request from Tremblay's Bar and Grill, 514 Park Avenue, to allow food and alcohol service in the fence and patio area behind the owner's other property at 506 Park Avenue from May 21st, 2020 to October 15th, 2020.
Andrew Kelly, so moved.
Mark Ryan,
Hamilton,
second for discussion.
We have a motion and a second for discussion.
My question, this is Mark Ryan. My question again is the same one. Are there any abutters who might be affected by the expansion?
They actually already have approval.
Okay.
This is just because of the extenuating circumstances, but they already have outdoor expansion approval
Okay, great.
that you've given.
So that this is nothing in addition to what they already have.
No.
Okay.
No, they're gonna utilize the kitchen at Tremblay's to serve the
Right.
food behind the new
Right.
restaurant.
Right, okay, great.
All right, are there any people in the audience who wish to speak to this item? No hands raised. Are there any members of the town council who'd like to say anything else? All right, Madam Clerk, may we take a vote?
All right. Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye. So the motion passes 6-0. Thank you very much. So we're moving to item C from Dina Ochi, doing business as Valley Inn Restaurant, 2221 West Main Road, to allow food and alcohol service in an outside dining area from May 21st, 2020 to October 15th, 2020.
Glenn Katzman, motion to approve.
Mark Ryan, seconded.
It's Dina Ochi Estate.
I'm sorry. Are there any comments from anyone in the audience? See no hands raised. Are there any comments from members of the town council? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, can you take a vote?
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton? Katzman?
Aye.
Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye. All right, the motion passes 6-0. That completes the work that the Board of License Commissioner needs. Do we need a motion to leave?
Motion.
Keith Hamilton, a motion to adjourn for the Board of License Commissioners.
Mark Ryan, seconded.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk?
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye. So motion to adjourn carries 6-0. We're moving on to old business. Item 1, determine operating and implementation guidelines for Sandy Point and Macquarie Point beaches. Mr. Rayner.
Good evening, Vice President, Town Council, ladies and gentlemen. At the last council meeting, we were discussing beaches, and we were asked to develop recommended guidelines for the town beaches. We have worked this through the staff, all the appropriate departments, and in conjunction with DEM and their recently released beach guidance recommendations or guidelines. Right? So what I'd like to do is just go down. I'll review Sandy Point first, and then Macquarie Point. I'll highlight what we are recommending to the council and some of the logic behind that. So for Sandy Point, we are recommending that for now, Sandy Point would be beach pass parking only. So anybody wishing to use the parking at Sandy Point would have to have a beach pass. We would also place a variable message board prior to the entrance of Sandy Point, alerting the public to that policy. We would place all appropriate signage in accordance with the DEM guidelines. This is the face masks and social distancing signage that's been distributed to the towns. Also in accordance with the DEM guidelines, we would close the boardwalk. There's just not enough room on the boardwalk for people to socially distance themselves. Therefore, the entry and the exit into the beach area would be just beyond the parking lot, where it's much wider, and we can create an entry and an exit lane separated by cones and appropriate signage. We would have a gate attendant. Because this essentially beach pass parking means you're a resident, there are no fees to be collected. The attendant is there just to ensure that the vehicles that are entering do have the beach pass. As we have done in the past, on the weekdays, we direct people to come to town hall if they don't have a pass to get a beach pass. Beach passes are free for residents. You just have to show proof of residency and your car registration. On the weekends, when town halls close, in the past, we have made allowances for that, where the beach attendant checks identification and proof of residency. We would recommend that we would continue to do that for Portsmouth residents, but through the window. So there would be nothing exchanging hands. The visitor would have to show that at the car window. The attending would just check it and then pass them on it if they are indeed a resident. DEM has issued guidelines. We can open beaches. Ours were never closed, but henceforth, their guideline is to follow a formula to determine the number of people that are allowed on the beach. We have done that. There's a little bit of fudge in there because you have to take into consideration low tide and high tide. We have come up with a number of 100 people to be allowed on the beach. There will be no lifeguards right away. The lifeguards would serve as attendants to help monitor social distancing, and the bathhouse. The bathhouse, we do have to provide facility. We recommend that we provide facilities for the patrons. Otherwise, we deal with a different issue. So we would recommend that the bathhouse be open, and it would be closed 10 minutes of every hour to allow the attendant to clean and disinfect the bathhouse. Entry into the bathhouse would be regulated by the attendant, one at a time, or with small children. Of course, they could be accompanied by an older child or an adult. And again, we would adhere to all the DEM guidance. So all visitors would be required to wear face coverings when they are unable to consistently distance from other people on the beach, including when walking to and from the parking lot. And all groups must be limited in size in accordance with current Rhode Island Department of Health and state guidelines. And every group must maintain a minimum of 6 feet apart from other groups. And then the last thing with regard to Sandy Point, to discourage people who are turned away from parking in the neighborhoods, we would make Sigourney Avenue, or Sigourney Road rather, resident-only parking. If that's approved, we are ready to implement that tomorrow, and the Chief of Police can elaborate on our plan to make that happen. With regard to Macquarie Beach, what we are recommending is that we would also go to a beach pass parking only on Macquarie Beach. So right now, our beach passes say Sandy Point. If you have a Sandy Point beach pass sticker, it would be good for Macquarie or Sandy Point. If you approve these recommendations, we would go to just a single beach pass that would just say Portsmouth beaches. So we say Portsmouth Beach Pass. Then we would also have a second variable message board alerting the public to near the entrance to these new procedures. We would have the appropriate signage. At the entrance to Macquarie, where the road forks, we would establish one-way direction in and one-way direction out. This will allow us to adhere to the DEM guidelines, and it would cut down on cars driving up onto the grass and creating an erosion problem. There are no lifeguards in attendance at Macquarie. So to enforce this policy, we would have increased police patrol, which would be easily monitored by the police, because you're looking for the beach sticker in the window, and if there's no beach sticker in the window, you'll be asked to leave. And again, we would adhere to all the DEM guidance as much as possible. And just like we do in Sandy Point, we would make those first streets, William Street and Annette Drive, resident parking only. In addition to this, in anticipation that we would loosen, the state would loosen some of the guidelines, open up the state even more in phase 2 and phase 3 in the summer, and we would be allowing non-residents to go to Sandy Point. We're working to procure a parking kiosk, solar powered, so that there would be no money exchange between patrons and the attendant. People or non-residents going to the beach, when that becomes allowed, would pay for the parking at the parking kiosk and then put the ticket in their window, much like you've done in Newport. I think that is it. So we'll take some questions and try to explain some of the logic if we haven't done that.
Okay, why don't we start with the members of the town council? Are there any questions or comments?
Yes, I have a question.
Zach?
Yeah, how did we get to the 100 people number? Are we sure that's not 100 cars? I just measured the beach. There's like 1,500 feet of beach. So even if you take into account high tide and you have families like spaced 10 people, 10 feet apart, and like, I don't know, 4 people per family, that's almost 600 people. 100 just seems really, really low.
Yeah, the DEM guideline, the formula is about 60 square feet per person. We went down and measured it as well. So at low tide, it's about 75 people, and at high tide, it's about 180 people. So we just took the number 100 to be on the safe side. So the key here, and the DEM guideline, is you're regulating the number of people on the beach, not the number of cars. If you had 100 cars, if it were 100 cars and you had 4 people, 5 people in a car, then we would quickly violate the DEM guidelines. So it's not really the number of cars, it's the number of people. So
yeah, I understand, but I think I think there might be a mistake, because there's 1,500 feet of beach available, and even if there's only 10 feet of beach at high tide, that's still well over 100 people. So I would just like to confirm, because 100 people is a really, really, really low number. So what are we considering the beach?
Well, we've laid this all out. Brian Woodhead, are you on?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
So to answer Ms. Abbott's question, me and Wendy went down there. We only measured 417 linear feet of beach, because that's what the lifeguards pretty much on their jurisdiction. Because after that 417 feet, it's a private beach over there, so we can't really classify that as a beach. So
But then you're only measuring the part that is on either side of where the boardwalk goes in, and we're having people enter and exit over at the other end. I think we at least have to count the beach up to that area, that length, which, okay, if we don't go the whole length of the beach, that just from the north end of the beach to where we're going to have people enter and exit, that's 1,200 feet right there.
Yeah, we didn't take that into consideration, that part. We just took in the part where the lifeguards monitor the 417 feet of beach.
Yeah. I think if we're going to be restricting people, this, you know, and I think we have to, and we should, obviously, we should at least consider the beach up to where we're having people enter and exit, because there will be people that will just sit in that end of the beach and not walk all the way to the north end. So I think we have to include the whole 1,200 feet of beach, even if we don't go a little further south, because it is still public for a little bit further south than that. So I would just propose that we count the entire length of the beach and don't restrict it to just the lifeguarded area, because we will have people wanting to use the full length of the beach, I think. And we usually do.
It's a valid point. What we were looking at is, where are people going to want to go? Because on top of all this, this will be spot checked by DEM, Department of Health, and where people are going to want to go. There may be some people that are satisfied to sit in the rocky area of the beach, but the reality is, if you go on the beach, most people are going to want to go to where the sand is. And that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I see your point, but I think if we're going to limit it to, 60 square feet per person, we're going to have to be a little bit more generous in the area of the beach that we allow people to sit in, because 100 people is just a really small number. So if somebody gets there and there's, the first 100 people have filled the area where the lifeguards are, they might be fine sitting in the rocky area, or even if it's just for 10 minutes to, I don't know, take a swim, put their feet in the water, and then turn around and leave.
Thank you, Ms. Abbott. Did the staff want to respond any further?
That's our logic.
I just think it's gonna get too crowded in that area.
Wait, let's, before, Wendy Bulk.
Oh, yes, it's Wendy Bulk, Parks and Rec. I just think it's gonna get a little crowded in that sandy area, if we allow more than 100.
People still need to be at least 6 feet apart. We're going to have to make sure they're still sitting at least 6 feet apart.
Yes.
Exactly, that's our point. Most people are going to want to go to the sandy area, and then you can't keep them 6 feet apart. We create more of an enforcement issue. It's up to the council, but that was our recommendation.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions, Ms. Abbott, or not? Then,
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Hamilton.
Oh, actually, sorry, I did have another question. Sorry, Keith.
Go ahead, Ms. Abbott.
In terms of the beach passes, I think it's great that we go to the beach passes. Can we have some kind of mechanism where we can get beach passes online so people don't have to come to town hall? Should be a relatively easy transaction, and then they get the beach pass in the mail, or do a curbside pickup or something where they don't have to physically come into town hall with the form.
We can certainly set something like that up. We were just going by how we've done it, and we realized that there are going to be people that are going to want to do this rather quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great to have the options, but if we can provide the option to do it online, I think that would be a good idea.
They're gonna have to be able to upload their car registration, as those registration numbers go on the beach pass. Also, they're gonna have to show proof of residency.
That's fine. I think most people that are working from home have capabilities to take pictures or scan documents and attach them to application.
Right. Thank you.
I have one question. This is Mark Ryan.
You're out, Mr. Hamilton.
Oh, sorry, Hamilton. Yeah, sorry, Mr. Hamilton was first.
That's okay. Just two quick questions. One, I just wanted to make sure that when we're counting residents, that we're making sure that our residents who are rentals from the Navy or the military families are included in there. So if they could show their lease and get a pass, they're not being excluded out of this group.
They've always had to show proof of residency, so they have a lease if they don't have, and their car registration. If somebody else, for instance, a car that is their company car, they have to get a letter from the
Right.
company showing that that is their card to be used, as well as their proof of residency.
Secondly, as far as the boardwalk goes, and I understand how tight it is and people going in and out, can we make the boardwalk an exit only? Most people
Yeah.
at the end of the day are extremely tired, and you got 3 or 4 kids you're dragging with you. That's a long walk all the way back down the other end of the beach.
We did. Yeah, I mean, so we could, I'll turn it over to Wendy here in a second. That's one of the things that we looked at. But once it's open, and people are gonna run to the bathroom and then run back to the beach. And the DEM guideline states that we have to have one-way traffic.
I mean, you could say the same thing about the other walkway. We're gonna have to police the other one. I think it'd be almost easier to have everybody go in the south end and everybody go out the boardwalk and just post signs saying one-way traffic. We're gonna have the same issue with the walkway on the other end. We're gonna have to, at some point, count on people to try to behave appropriately.
Also, if they're leaving the beach to go use the facilities, they're gonna have to wear their mask anyways, correct?
Correct.
We're just looking at enforceability.
I understand.
DEM guidelines. I mean, if you want to ignore them, ignore them. I mean, we're telling you what we've been told.
I'm not saying ignoring. I'm just saying it's just if somebody has to go to the bathroom, they run out the boardwalk. They can walk back in the other way. You know, my kids aren't little anymore, but I've been there with little kids. We gotta go. They gotta go.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hamilton.
Yeah,
Dr. Ryan.
Yeah, I just had a question. I probably would want to kind of wait and see how this happened, but there's fairly large neighborhoods that are Sandy Point Beach. And so there's a fairly significant number of people who could walk onto the beach and not necessarily via Sandy Point, but from other points as well. How would we deal with those people?
Yeah, this is, obviously, this isn't a perfect science. We had talked about that. We realized that there are people that can come over to Sandy Point. But the preponderance of the
I'm one of
people
them.
coming in are from the Manor House area. But we think the overwhelming preponderance of people are going to come in via the traditional route. That's one of the reasons why we're making the recommendation that we have the attendants. We'll have an attendant at the gate, and then we have attendants who are monitoring social distancing. And they'll be able to monitor if people are coming in and waiting in from the north side, and they can let the attendant with the counter know.
Okay.
I have another question. Are these attendants going to be our standard college age lifeguards that are part-time employees?
Yes, they'll be part-time employees, yes.
Do you have any concerns with putting them at risk?
At risk for COVID, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
I have concern for everybody who's going outside, but it's the town's wish that we open this. So we will give them, they will have the protective measures, they will have their masks, they will have gloves, and there shouldn't be any interaction with people other than reminding people that are not following the guidelines that they should. They're not police and they're not enforcers. The police will be the enforcers. So people that don't want to adhere to the guidelines will be reported to the police, and we'll turn that duty over to them.
I believe in Middletown, the enforcers or attendants at the gate are either a DPW employee or a police department employee. Is that an option we considered?
It's an option we considered. We don't have the number of staff to do this.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Abbott. Is there someone else?
Yeah, can we leave this item on the agenda for next Tuesday night for review, please? See how this weekend went,
Is that a motion, Mr. Hamilton?
please.
What is going to happen this weekend then?
What was just outlined.
Well, I would make a motion that we increase the number of people from 100.
Should we take that specific smaller motion before we take on the entire entire policy?
The motion is
An
made.
amendment to the policy. So yes.
Policy, so yes. All right, then we have a motion to approve the policy, and then we
My
are,
motion was not to approve the policy. My motion just to put this, it's not a motion. It's just a request to put this item on the agenda for next week so we can review it again.
okay, but the item today is to decide what policy we will have in place for Memorial Day weekend. So,
And Ms. Abbott is asking to amend it to be, pick a number. You can't just say more than 100. 150,
All right.
200.
I'm gonna ask, give me 1 minute, please.
Madam Vice President, this is the police chief.
yes,
Could I have an opportunity to speak about the number?
yes, please do.
I just asked that the council consider keeping it at 100 at this time. My concern would be if that we open it up and we have more than 100, we really don't know what we're facing at this time. I think we've looked at the numbers, and I'd rather have it that we can expand and look at it on Tuesday or a later date, rather than we get into a situation where if we increase the number more than 100, now we've had it at a point of no return, and now it's more difficult to enforce the guidance from the governor. So I'd ask the council to consider that we keep it at the 100 number. We can always increase if we find that there's significant room there at the beach, but ask the council to consider keeping it at 100 at this time.
Thank you, Chief Peters.
Can I just comment for a minute? I appreciate the concern and I understand where you're coming from. I understand how we got to the 100-person limit by limiting it to just the area where we have the lifeguard chairs, but we have a much longer beach. If you take the beach from one end to where the entrance is going to be, it's 1,200 feet of beach. And if you only take 20 feet at high tide, which is relatively conservative, you were allowing about 240 square feet per person, which is great, but I think 100 feet is insane. I would make a motion that we increase that to at least 200 and then revise it next week.
Thank you, Ms. Abbott. Is there anyone else who wants to comment? So,
I would make the comment, Madam Vice President, thank you. I'm disinclined to increase the number beyond what our councilman have determined is a safe, manageable starting number without actually going out and measuring. And I'm inclined to start with a safe, soft opening. We can always increase it. I support Mr. Hamilton back on the agenda at our very next meeting, less than a week from today. Let's see how Memorial Day weekend goes. There's a lot more going on in terms of logistics and management than just the number of people. So I wouldn't want to overwhelm staff with management issues that they're not familiar with. Let's start with 100 and go up from there if we can.
And I would hope we can revise this more than just next Tuesday, because the weather this weekend is going to be cold and windy. So I can't imagine, I don't think 100 people, maybe 100 people won't be an issue this weekend, but it might be by the time July rolls around.
Well, I agree. I think DEM guidance may expand over the course of the summer. The guidance from the state may evolve. And so I think we should revisit this as frequently as appropriate, as frequently as necessary.
Yeah, we're at 4 times DEM guidance, just so that we're clear, but that's fine.
And I think once we've actually had a trial run, and you're right, there's not a lot of people who are going to want to venture into the Atlantic Ocean at the end of May.
No.
So I don't think demand for swimming is going to be particularly robust this weekend. And since we're setting up these procedures and we have not yet had any experience with how things are going to go, how easily the enforcement's going to be done, I just as soon keep the numbers lower until we see how adept we are at doing this. And then, yeah, I think as the weather gets warmer, more people are definitely going to want to go down there. And I think Mr. Katzman's right. I think the it seems like guidance from the state and from the federal government change about every hour. So, I'm presuming that we're going to be facing a different set of recommendations by the middle of June.
Thank you, Dr. Ryan. Mr. Kelly, you've had your hand up.
Yes, I don't want to speak to this motion that hasn't received a second yet, but I do want to just outline a few of my concerns. Unless there's going to be a second.
I'm sorry, Ms. Abbott, are you, you have made the motion to increase the number to?
I made the motion already.
Yes. Is there a second?
There is not a second, no.
Hearing no second, I believe that motion fails. We'll move back to the original. Is there a motion to approve the procedures for?
Madam Vice
I
President.
think Andrew wanted to speak.
No, go ahead.
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Rayner, I am very concerned about our part-time staff being gone and dealing with the public. A few things that would help me feel better about that is that they be issued face shields to cover their eyes or goggles, because we know that COVID can get into your mucous membranes in your eyes and infect you. Also, I'm hoping that there's going to be some significant training on disinfecting the bathhouse. I don't know how far you've gotten with it, but I'd like to know.
I'll take the last one first. Yes, there'll be training. Wendy has already got the supplies, or has ordered the supplies. They'll be here in time. And as far as the face masks go, we would have to procure those. I think that should be relatively easy. Chief Ford, are you online? Because I think you have some that may be available.
I don't see Chief Ford.
I don't see him.
I'm pretty sure between our EOC and first responders, we can accommodate that. No problem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? All right, then.
You need a motion.
A motion. No, there is a question. I'm sorry, there is a question from the audience and from
All employees, full and part-time, are trained on COVID guidelines, according to Lisa.
Yes,
To comment, not a question.
one of the conditions to open the beach is we have to go through a pretty extensive, it's called a COVID-19 control plan. And we have to do this and maintain this on file. This will be done by the rec department. And that is obviously one of the things that's covered.
Thank you.
Keith Hamilton. I will make a motion to approve the guidelines as presented and then request that they be put back on the agenda for next Tuesday.
This is Mark Ryan. I second that motion.
If I can just speak.
Yes, Mr. Rayner.
So I want to be clear, because these are notes I've taken, so we accommodate as much as possible. So beach pass parking only, the appropriate signage. We'll keep the number of people to 100 at Sandy Point with an eye towards reviewing that and increasing that number after review. We would open the boardwalk to one-way exit, and then the entrance would be at the south of that from the driveway. And the face masks, in addition to the mouth cloth face masks, we would have the face shields for the attendants.
I have a quick question, Mr. Rayner. DEM guidelines are appropriate for Sandy Point and Macquarie Beach, so we have to, our staff is going to have measures Macquarie Beach and set a per person limit as well.
It should not be more than 100.
No.
So noted, we don't have attendance at Macquarie Beach. So our plan there is to monitor that with police patrol. And if required, Chief Peters has agreed that he would call in detail or an extra shift to take care of the situation at McCory Beach until that gets resolved, and then we'll just have to monitor that as the weather gets warm.
Couldn't we just put an attendant at McCory?
We don't have, if I put an attendant there, I have to have bath or restroom facilities. We don't have restroom facilities there.
Could we put an attendant and a couple of porta johns and apply that towards our COVID expenses at this point in time?
Yeah, I agree with that.
You don't have to answer that if you don't know the answer right now.
We looked into that, and our recommendation right now is to not do that. We have a tremendous issue. We're going to have to change an entire mindset at McCory. And the issue, the biggest issue we have in McCory is not the number of people that are in McCory. It's the people that are going there late at night. It's the fishermen. It's the mess. And we think that by making McCory essentially a resident-only area, these are the people that have a vested interest in McCory Beach. We don't think that we're going to have the issues down there that we used to have. Yes, we're probably going to get a lot of people that are going to try to get on McCory Beach, but if the police are patrolling this and ticketing those that aren't supposed to be there, eventually we'll change that culture. If we have porta johns there, it's almost an invitational hazard. We're never going to resolve this problem, and I think the residents down there will not appreciate that. So we're trying to take this a measured approach to this. We can certainly do that if that's what the council desires, but I think now we've run into the issue. We're going to have an attendant down there. We're going to have to clean it, and we're also trying to keep an eye on the budget.
Well, in terms of the number of people down there, if we don't have a set number and DEM comes down with their number in their head and that area is significantly over, DEM will close the beach. So,
but you're right. But the amount of area at McCory Beach is immense compared to Sandy Point Beach.
Understood, but we still need to have a number that they need to understand that if it's 250, it's 250. If they're at 270 and DEM decides that by their math, they're only supposed to have 225, they will close the beach permanently.
That's a good point, and we'll have that number. We'll figure that number out tomorrow.
This is less for you and more for people who want to go to McCory Point. That it's going to be residents only, but if there's 500 residents down there, and DEM comes down and says no joy, Governor Raimondo will take great pleasure in shutting the beach down.
It's noted. We'll take care of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hamilton, is there anyone else on the town council who would like to ask a question or make a comment at this point? How about in the audience? Are there any hands raised?
No.
No.
Okay, then I think where we're at is that there is a motion to accept the proposed procedures. I would just add that one thing that was discussed and left out of your amendments, Mr. Rayner, was the possibility of getting passes online.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a note here. Thank you.
Okay, and also I just want to underline and highlight the fact that these beach passes are a response to the COVID-19 situation, which is limiting these two beaches to Portsmouth residents. So that is the situation. I believe our staff has really worked hard to try to balance a lot of moving pros and cons, as well as working with a lot of moving targets. So that said, we have a motion to accept the proposed procedures with the potential amendments that we discussed listed by Mr. Rayner. Do I have a second?
Mr. Hamilton made the motion, Dr. Ryan seconded.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, could we take a vote?
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Ms. Uchikusa?
Aye. The motion passes 6-0. Going back to Mr. Hamilton's request that we discuss this at the next town council meeting. I believe we don't need a motion, but that will appear on the next agenda.
It was wrapped into the motion, so.
Great, thank you so much for everyone's comments. Okay, future meetings. May 26th, we're going to have the town council meeting at 7 p.m. June 8th, June 10th is the public budget hearing, special one on Wednesday. June 24th would be the town council meeting and adoption of 2020-2021 budget.
Madam Vice President, can I discuss the public hearing on that Wednesday?
Yes, Mr. Hamilton.
Now that we are able to go back to church, the limit of 25%, it would strike me that we should be able to have a public meeting in a public facility at a 25% ratio as well. Have we gotten guidance from the governor yet, or is that just, should we just plan on doing that and let her say no?
I believe Mr. Rayner has looked into this. Mr. Rayner?
Yeah,
I know he has.
this, I had brown curly hair before this started. Yeah, that's a great point. You know, I hate to be you know, Captain Obvious, but the reality is it is still not allowed. She was very categorical today. No groups larger than 5. Social distancing remains in place. I have brought it up with the governor's office, with the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns, and I would say that 39 out of 39 cities and towns have backed me up on this. But the reality is there's been no answer other than the repeat of the guidance. What makes it difficult for us is we have time lines that we have to follow in accordance with law, and we have to have our advertisement in the paper on Tuesday, I'm sorry, which means that we have to have it to the proofers tomorrow, which means that we have to identify how the meeting's going to be held. I'm holding out hope for tomorrow. I have 3 more conference calls tomorrow, but hope is not a strategy, so we've drafted the notice that it would be a virtual meeting. If that changes tomorrow, we'll change the notice and we'll have it in an auditorium. But unfortunately, right now, it looks like it's going to have to be a virtual meeting.
Well, just going based on the general guidelines that were put forth for churches, and my number may be off, but I think that the high school auditorium is about 300 people. That gives us about a 75-person window that we could have. We could easily separate out the council and the school committee. And if past experience is of the past few years, we're not going to have 50 people in the audience.
You're pushing on a rope. I agree with you 100%. And I've been beating this drum for 2 months. I wish I could give you a different answer. You're right. It's looking like the guideline. It's looking like it's not definite. The governor announced that it's her desire to open up the churches the weekend of the 30th and allow those religious institutions and facilities to have up to 25% capacity. I've even brought up the example of, well, why don't we hold our meeting in PPAC? That seems to be a good place to hold press conferences. It didn't get taken very well.
Can I just make a comment? Even if we do have it in an auditorium, if we're allowed to do that, we're still going to have the Zoom setup so people can watch from home and ask questions over the phone and via chat in case they're not comfortable attending?
Yeah, I think that would be a given, and quite frankly, I think henceforth we're going to be working very hard to make sure that, you know, even post-COVID, that we would have this ability.
Agreed. Thank you.
Anyone else?
There's
We
a
have,
hand raised.
We have, Mr. Grieve has his hand up, I believe.
Yes, Mr. Grieve.
He's still muted.
Someone needs to.
No. Mr. Grieve still having a problem getting his microphone working, so he has to go to Mrs. Grieve.
Tom, you're muted yourself.
There we go. No, there you go.
Hello,
Here we
can
go.
you hear, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I don't know, there must be a setting wrong on my thing. I apologize for that. I just wanted to point out that we were okay with having the audit 2 months later than the law said we should. I think we could, if we can't get the public hearing as a real public hearing, we should delay until we can have a real public hearing. And it's clear that these rules will be relaxed sequentially over time. And I would think that this would be a very good reason to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Grieve. Are there?
That's not, I mean, just for the council, that of course has been one of the suggestions made to the governor's office. There's no answer on that yet. Obviously, we're not the only town dealing with this. With respect to the audit, that just required a notice to the auditor general. This requires a change to the law, which would have to, that requires a pay rate way hard in mind, but keep pushing.
Mr. Rayner, are there other, I'm sorry, the writing is so tiny on the screen here.
Mr. Fitzmaurice.
Mr. Fitzmaurice.
Thank you, Mrs. Vice President. I appreciate the efforts that the town administrators put into trying to get a response from the governor's office. Also, I observed that other people trying to get responses from the governor's office had about the same result. In any case, I'd like to point out that I reviewed all of the list of the governor's executive orders. She did not set aside the one that deals with public hearings, which is what this is, nor did she put aside the application of town charters. So my judgment is, and we've got lawyers present, that unless she does that, this is still in effect. Also, I would point out that I don't think that he has authority to override our town charter without a vote of the people of the town of Portsmouth. But that's my remarks. I think this thing can be done. I agree with Mr. Hamilton. My memory serves correctly, the capacity of the high school auditorium is 500. But in any case, it's big enough to do it with the spacing necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzmaurice. Are there other people in the audience who wish to speak? Madam Clerk, perhaps you could.
I do have a concern about this issue. The virus is still prevalent. We are not going to see the end of this anytime soon. And although the auditorium is quite large, there are only limited entryways and exitways by which people can get in and out of this auditorium. Plus, it's an enclosed space and the air is not being constantly recirculated to the outside. So if you have a large number of people, the aerosol does build up potentially. And so unless we're being told that this is okay, and I'd be very reluctant myself to go into such an assembly, I'm perfectly fine with this being done virtually, at least until this epidemic is under better control.
Yeah, I agree with Mark. No offense, but I have no desire to sit in an auditorium with all of you guys. and an audience. If I've been home for 2 months, I have to keep my kids home. They can't go back to school. It makes no sense to congregate in an auditorium. I don't care how far apart we sit. It's going to be early June, and there's going to be some kind of air circulation going on in the room. So I'm in favor of having it virtually. Also, if we were to delay it, I don't know if we would even be able to do that. I don't know. For all we know, it could start getting worse this summer again. We'll have another shutdown, and then we delayed it for nothing. I think the normal course of doing business, unfortunately, at this time is over the internet, as we're doing right now, and I think we should proceed as recommended.
Ms. Abbott, anyone else? Ms. Grieve.
Yes, it is Nancy Green this time. I agree. I have been anywhere except the grocery store 2 times in the last month. But I think if we can't have a public hearing on the budget, it needs to be postponed. Having it virtual is not the way it's designed to be. And this budget is way too important, especially at this. It's very complicated, especially the economics of what's going on in this country. Just my opinion, it needs to be postponed.
Thank you, Ms. Grieve. Is there anyone else? Madam Clerk.
This is Mark. I move to adjourn the meeting.
This is Andrew Kelly, second.
All right, then we have a motion and a second. And Madam Clerk.
Ms. Abbott?
Aye.
Mr. Hamilton?
Aye.
Mr. Katzman?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Dr. Ryan?
Aye.
Ms. Jukusa?
Aye. The vote is 6-0 to adjourn. Thank you very much for everyone for your help and participation. And we will see you May 26th.
Thank you.